Hello.
Hello, Ellie.
Hi. We have decided to chat a bit about balance. Mm, my thing is that there are lots and lots of things that I find joy in my life at the moment, but struggling to find, which is interesting because we just spoke about time constraints, struggling to find the time to do all of the things that bring me joy every day, as well as fitting in the things that I have to do, which is a weasel word. We come back to all these things that we've
Yeah,
spoken about in the past, but the things that I must do in order to do the things that I want to do. So again, talking about a constraint, which is financial money. Um, I wish I could get by without having to rely on it, but I do rely on it very heavily. Um, so so I wanted to just talk a little bit about balance, and I know you had some suggestions about ways to find balance in your life and where to fit things in and how to do them. Have you got all the
well,
answers, Herman?
no, no, no. I have more questions than answers. Um,
Questions are a good place to start with these conversations.
yeah, so I think we we're all looking for I don't know, some sage advice that we can apply to our lives in terms of how to achieve balance. Because as you quite rightly pointed out, it is about the balance between the things that we must do versus the things that we want to do. Um, what I find is that trying to find that so-called work-life balance, which is utter bullshit in my opinion, because there's just life and work is part of life. It's a
Yeah,
necessary part of life, and it's also an enjoyable part of life.
well, it can be.
It can be. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's less and sometimes it's more. But so there's just life. And then we have these things that make up the different components of our lives. And trying to find something which you can apply quite strictly into every day, whether it's your weekday and your weekend. That doesn't work for me anymore. Now there are a few things that I do to try and give me some balance in my work day, um, and I think we've mentioned that before. Is like schedule the things that are really important to you for first thing in the morning,
hmm,
before the day gets hold of you and things get busy. And as the day progresses, there are often other constraints placed on your time that can also make you go, well, you know what, I've had such a busy day. I don't feel like, fill in whatever it is. Uh, Reading, exercising, going for a walk, doesn't matter.
yeah,
Whereas if I put those things in the first part of the day, um, it gives me a sense of accomplishment. I feel like I've learned something. It helps me, I don't know, gather my thoughts, my thinking, my plan for the day, etc. But what about the bigger spans or the longer spans of time? Over a week, over a month, over a year.
hmm,
And I don't think that there's something that specifically fits into that. I think it's very much dependent on where you are at that particular point in time. Maybe balance is taking a day off. Maybe it's taking a week off.
yeah,
Maybe it's, I don't know, there's this very famous um, thing about Bill Gates that used to take, I think it was 2 weeks a year, where he would, and I don't know if he still does that, but where for 2 weeks, even during the time when he was running Microsoft, he would take 2 weeks a year and go sit in a log cabin somewhere in the woods with only a pile of books.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why he did that was to kind of maintain that balance and give him an opportunity to think and to read and etc. etc. Um, so I think that there are many examples of high achievers who would do something like that, and
Yeah.
not necessarily on a regular schedule, but where they make make time and significant time to maintain that balance. Where do you find that you struggle most with balance?
Um, I think that that's a good point that you just made because I've been kind of committed since this happened, kind of end of February, beginning of March, to these daily habits of journaling, reading, walking, or exercising, or swimming is a new one that I've added in. Um, and writing was in there for a little while, but that one got pushed to the side. But maybe something I need to consider is giving myself kind of the longer time goals, and not necessarily the everyday ones. So I know that I can do the everyday ones, and there's a few of them that fit into my everyday, like reading and journaling. Those ones work every single day for me. But maybe I need to not try and fit all of the things that I want to do into that same format because that's not possible. Um, Something else that I've just been thinking about is like, I know that life kind of happens in waves, and there are like really high times and really low times, and I feel like I'm quite comfortable with the fact that it's not going to always be a high. Um, and maybe that's making me cautious because I've been on a little bit of a high. I had a big dip probably around February when I started changing my habits.
Mm.
And that caused me to like make some changes in my life and do things that would make me happy or bring me happiness, bring me joy. And I feel like I've been riding that high wave for quite a while, and I'm ready for the crash. Um, so I think I'm trying to prepare myself because that's also balance. The fact that you know that they're going to be good times, they're going to be bad times, there's going to be, but I'm trying to prepare myself that when the crash happens or the low happens, that I'm um, mentally stable enough and well equipped to handle that and to ride that until I get back to a high time because I know it's going to come. So,
Mm. So what does a crash look like?
um,
Um,
giving up on all of the things that I've worked so hard to achieve. I feel like sometimes uh, it's a bit like a binge, in terms of eating, where you've like kept something back from yourself. You say you're not going to eat chocolate, let's say for
mm,
Lent for 40 days, and then you have one little piece of chocolate and you go, oh, well, I've broken it now. I'm going to eat the whole thing. I'm going to clear the cupboard out of all the chocolate. So I feel like I'm worried because I haven't missed a day of reading. I haven't missed a day of journaling since I started. I'm very worried that I'm going to miss a day and then I'm going to give it up completely. And then that's going to be a low for me because one of the things that is bringing me joy at the moment is the fact that I'm accomplishing this journaling and reading every single day. Maybe the fact that I'm aware of it, and I know awareness is a big part of it, the fact that I know that that can happen and that if I miss 2 days, more than one day, I'm going to be really upset with myself. So maybe the fact that I'm aware of that is going to keep me going on the high wave.
so, but I mean, all of these things that you mentioned now has got more to do with maintaining your habits versus balance
Yeah,
for me. So,
yeah,
so I know part of maintaining a balance means how do I incorporate the habits that I want to build? That's part of
yeah,
it. But I see the balance thing as a kind of an overarching or a much bigger thing. And maybe part of the balance is to say, well, um, I don't know, just like you have Lent, we're supposed to give something up to say, well, you know what, I am just a random example. the first week of August, I'm not going to read a single word
Yeah.
as part of balance. I don't know if that's part of balance because a lot of what we talk about in terms of balance is we talk about our busy lifestyles. We talk about, you know, work taking up so much of your time. Taking care of family takes up so much of your time, you know. And what about my time? What about me? What about getting to do the things that I want to do and so on? So that's kind of how I see the the balance thing. And then we can kind of drill into those things in terms of, okay, cool, balance in terms of myself. Um, the chocolate example that you mentioned, you know, do I allow myself to eat chocolate on Fridays or Saturdays, but not the rest of the week, you know, so that I
Yeah.
don't become. Um, so I think that the balance, because earlier we spoke about the things that we must do versus the things that we want to do or the things that we get more enjoyment of at the moment. I
Yeah.
think that's probably a better way of looking at it. Because, like I said earlier, I don't like the idea that work
The bad
gets to
rap.
be, yeah, it gets a bad rap, you know. It's kind of like demonized, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's
if I say
you
to you
mentioned
that,
John Morrow. I was going to say
yeah,
you mentioned John Morrow, and I googled him, and the first thing that popped up was quite brutal. His quote. Have you heard
no,
this?
I haven't, no.
Uh, it's a thing he put on LinkedIn. People who whine about work life balance are really just trying to cover up. They hate their boss, they chose the wrong career, they're commuting too far, they suck at managing their time, their team is a bunch of losers, they suck at saying no, they're in poor mental or physical health. The opposite is also true. People in top health who love their boss, chose the perfect career, work remotely, manage their time well, are surrounded by amazing teammates, and set proper boundaries, never have a problem with work life balance. They can't wait to get to work because work is awesome. In more brutal terms, if you find yourself longing for greater work life balance, stop being a victim, choose a better way to work. The problem isn't the job, the problem is you.
Okay, that sums it up. Thanks for a nice
Yeah.
chat.
Work
But that's
isn't the
very well
problem, you
put.
are. Yeah.
It is very well put.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so true, you know, that if you do if you do work in an environment that you find enjoyment and fulfillment, etc., etc., um, then it's not a problem showing up for work.
Yeah.
Um, so, but even if you're in a situation like that, isn't it then still good to say, well, I need that balance to take myself out of that environment, even if it's just to go and sit and feel like, hey, it would have been nice to actually be at work today. Isn't that part of the
Yeah.
balance?
Yeah. I mean, that is why we get annual leave as part of our contracts, and so many people don't use it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's
Yeah. I think
so
it's become easier not to use it because of remote working. Um,
yes,
so you end up working maybe not as hard every single day, but working every single day rather than taking some time off.
yeah. Look, I'm a huge fan of making sure that you take um, at least long weekends
Yeah.
every now and then. I would say once every 3 months. Make a long weekend. Take a Friday, take a Monday.
Yeah.
Plan some activity. It doesn't have to be away from home. It can be right there in your back garden, but plan something and take that time. Just that
Yeah.
little bit of a change from your usual weekend routine.
Yeah.
But planning something specific that you're going to do in that time as part of your, I don't know, recharge or whatever. And it could be, you know, something as simple as, um, you know, I've got this book that I want to read, or I actually want to go and watch 5 movies over the week, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be. Um, but to allow yourself that extra time
Mm-hmm.
quite frequently. And then extremely important, that thing about, I don't know, once or twice a year, I would even say twice a year, just take that longer time off.
Yeah.
And again, go do something.
Yeah.
Travel, travel. Travel
Mm.
doesn't have to mean getting on a plane or a boat or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Travel can be exploring your own town,
Yeah.
seeking out interesting things and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think I was quite lucky when I had this very stark moment. I can pinpoint the exact date because I started journaling, so I've got the date in my journal when I started reading. Um, I had, like I say, I just had a very low time. I was really struggling with a few things at work, and I happened to have a holiday coincide with that where I went to Norway and Poland, and that had been planned in advance, and that was definitely a turning point for me. It was just traveling, getting a bit of perspective, talking to different people, friends of mine who are working in different environments that have kids, um, and I think all of that helped me kind of start building the habits that have gotten me to the very positive place I'm in now. Although I'm very scared of a crash, but but I do feel like I'm trying to figure out how to balance my life better, and that's why we're talking about it.
But that's an interesting
Yeah,
observation that you made there in terms of, um, you didn't, it wasn't the fact that you went to different countries necessarily. Yeah, that has its charm as well, and there are things to experience and see and so on. But you mentioned talking to different people
yeah,
whose lives are quite different to yours, um, and kind of being recharged um, from those interactions.
yeah,
Um, and that's so there's this concept, I think, is probably the best way to describe it. This concept of when we talk about balance, there's also the inner and the outer balance.
yeah.
So, do we take care of that? You know, do we have enough time for ourselves where we just focus on the inner and that sort of thing? I suppose that's why meditation or some of those practices,
Breath work. Yeah.
breath work, etc. But I also think recognizing when you need um, some inner balance to make space for that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it looks like. It can be different for everybody. But then there's also the outer balance. In other words, okay, cool. I feel like, you know what, all I need is that interaction with other people or different places or that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. So that's also quite important to work into one's. I don't know if we can plan it too rigidly.
Yeah. But maybe just allow space for things like that to happen. Or, yeah.
Yeah, maybe we overcomplicate it.
Yeah. We probably do. I was going to say one of the simple things that has helped me just to be aware, like we mentioned earlier, being aware that something could happen or that things are happening in a certain, I don't know, cycle or whatever, is the journaling, which for me, journaling was kind of like a swear word. It was like, why would I ever sit and journal and write down my thoughts and feelings and what I did today? I don't think I really understood what journaling meant until I got the journal that gave me prompts, which really helped me.
Okay.
The three things I'm grateful for, one good thing that happened today, and then a space to write whatever you want. And I mostly write what my plan is for the day, what I want to do that day, what I don't want out of the day. So if I'm trying to give up gluten, I write it in my journal in the morning. No gluten today, no unhealthy snacks. And
Mm,
there's just this awareness. And when I scroll through the past 3 months of journaling, it's very interesting to see how my mind has changed and been working. When I first started, I said, lose 10 kilograms by June. And now I'm saying things like, go for a swim, go for a walk,
Oh,
read an
wow.
extra chapter of my book, or I'm a lot more focused on the small things than on lose 10 kilograms by June.
That's very interesting. So, two observations there. So
Yeah.
it sounds like you journal in the morning as opposed to
Yes.
some people prefer to do it at the end of the day.
Yeah. I do both.
Um,
So I do the one good thing that happened
okay.
today at the end of my day.
Oh,
And
cool.
then if I want to add any other notes from the day, I'll put them in there as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's quite nice. So you spend some time in the morning, and that kind of sets up your day, and you try and give a little bit of structure or
Yeah.
mini goals or whatever you want to call it. Then the other thing is that I found interesting from what you just mentioned is the fact that you go back and you look at what your journaling looked like last week and last month and 2 months ago and
Yeah.
so on. You can actually see the change, which should in itself kind of be motivating. Um, it could also, if it was the other way around, it could actually kind of um, be seen as a warning to, hey,
Yeah.
you know what, here's a trend or a tendency happening that I must pay attention to. And that awareness, you know, if you have that awareness without judging, because if if you get to a point where you have a thought but you don't want to write it down in your journal, um, that means that you in my definition of it, you don't have the awareness on and that you're judging instead of
Yeah.
journaling. And if one gets to that point where you at least have the awareness without the judging, and you see these patterns and so on play out, I think that can help to um, highlight when some of the balance must be addressed. And when we talked about these, well, you know what does that balance look like? It's different to just sticking to my routine or my habits or whatever. I must plan some time away.
Yeah.
Um, I must maybe take an afternoon this week or a morning or whatever works for you. And
Yeah.
that's quite interesting in terms of the what you get out of the journaling. I think it's very misunderstood.
Yeah. I always thought it was just about writing like your feelings or what you're doing that day or what kind of day you had.
Mm.
That's it feels a lot more useful to me than that idea of journaling does.
So, what are the practical steps that you are going to take in terms of either improving or maintaining your balance?
Um, well, I'm gonna keep journaling. um, for me, a big thing about balance is finding a way to live every day that leaves me happier at the end of the day, the end of the week. Um, so it's getting the right balance of the have tos and the want tos um, that allow me to continue doing what I'm doing. Because at the moment, I'm really happy and I'm very comfortable with where my life is right now. Um, so I want to keep doing more of that. So I think having my journal and I can see what I'm doing that's making me happy. And I will write down if I'm a little bit peeved about something in my journal so I can avoid the things that make me peeved and focus more on the things that bring me joy. Um, yeah, I think that's the practical. Well, I've already been doing that. It's the journaling every day, but that's the practical thing I'm going to continue to do.
Is there a way to change the have tos into want tos?
Well, that is one of those things when we were talking about words recently. It was about like reframing that you, instead of saying I have to go to this meeting, it's I get to go to this meeting or I get to meet these new people. So there's that whole thing about reframing the have tos to get tos. Um, yeah, that's a challenge. um, that is a challenge.
Yeah, it is. I, I I don't believe in just changing the word to bullshit yourself.
I'm too clever for that.
Yes, and most people are.
Yeah.
We know even if we change the words, then it's still not going to be fun or pleasurable. But everything we do doesn't have to be fun.
Yeah.
That's just the reality. Just like you said, that we will have these highs and then there will be lows. What do those lows look like? Well, we all hope that those lows are just shallow lows,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and
You hope
they
that it
don't,
goes
they
way
don't
more up than down.
way more up, yes, and just a little bit down. But I remember somebody, I can't remember who it was, who said that if roller coasters were just all downhill, or nobody would
Yeah.
go on it. It's the fact that you go up and then you
Yeah.
go down and then you get to go up
Yeah.
again. So it is kind of part of life.
Yeah.
It's about how do we navigate, etc. And as I say, some of these lows can be terrible, terrible lows. Um, but the I get to well, I get to do laundry is not necessarily something that is going to change my mind about that. But
Having clean clothes is.
having clean clothes, um,
Yeah.
you know, that's a positive, and that's something that I do want, and therefore I'm happy to
Yeah.
set that time aside and to do that, and so on. So again, like I said at the beginning, is I have more questions than answers about this balance thing. I
Yeah.
also feel like I've got pretty good balance in my life at the moment, in terms of the amount of time that I have to spend working, that I get to spend working. 99.9% of the time, I enjoy what I do. I enjoy
Mm-hmm.
um, I enjoy the elements of work and the things that I'm responsible for. So maybe I'm a bit luckier than most when it comes to that. For the rest of my life, I get to take time off.
Yeah.
I'm I'm pretty used to that. I know when it's necessary for me, and I can plan my schedule around that and
Yeah.
still be available, but also get to get away. So, but in terms of the the larger components of what does balance over a year look like? I
Yeah.
don't know if I have an answer for that yet.
It looks like we're going to have to come back to this.
I think so. The awareness of the balance and how did we get to balance? We spoke about something else, constraints, um, and now we're more aware of constraints. And now we'll be a little bit more aware of balance,
Yeah.
and it'll come up more. And I think in your thinking, um, and it'll be nice to revisit this in a while and say, okay, cool. How does that play out?
Yeah. That might become the format of our podcast, Herman. 10 episodes, and then we go back to
We
episode
go
one
back
and
to.
revisit it.
It's not a bad idea. It's not a
Yeah,
bad idea.
something a little bit different.
And something that hopefully we'll learn from, and we'll be able
Yeah.
to kind of share some experiences. Sounds good.
Cool. Thank you for
Thanks.
watching. Thank you for the podcast, Herman, and chat soon.
Cheers.